When the hull of a ship gets breached and icy water starts flooding the luxury cabins, the Rats are the first to abandon ship. But in the National Hockey League, when an entire franchise sinks to the bottom of the standings, it's not the fourth-line grinders who grab the first lifeboat. It's the $8 million superstars. And the St. Louis Blues have just hit rock bottom. The bombshell that exploded this morning via insider David Pagnotta lays it all bare. Elite forward Jordan Kyrou has formally notified the Missouri front office that his time there is done. He's demanded a waiver of his no-move clause to be traded as soon as possible. And guess who's grinning ear to ear on the other side of the Canadian border? Pocket stuffed with prospects and picks? None other than Montreal Canadiens general manager Kent Hughes. Today, we're going to dissect the anatomy of this open-air extortion. We'll dive into why the Blues project failed so miserably, how the swift justice of hockey has put a gun to St. Louis' head, and what it means to tie up our salary cap with an $8 million contract until the end of the decade. But before I throw the financial spreadsheets of this war onto your screen, I'm putting the executive pen in your hand. You're in charge of Montreal today. Do you have the ice in your veins to ship out our top prospects and first-round picks to embrace Jordan Kyrou's astronomical contract, securing an instant sniper for our top line? Or do you think paying $8 million a year for a player with just 32 points this season is a perfect recipe to throw our rebuild into the dumpster? Think with a calculator in hand, because the ice at the Bell Center doesn't forgive bad contracts. Let's take a hard look at the crime scene in Missouri. The St. Louis Blues have collapsed tactically, mentally, and spiritually. They're languishing in a shameful 31st place in the NHL standings. An absolute disaster. Jordan Kyrou, a natural-born sniper with a killer instinct who has flirted with 40-goal seasons in his career, finds himself trapped in what can only be described as a sporting retirement home. He's earning $8.125 million per season, locked in for 4 more years after this one. And he's done losing. He's flipped the switch to escape mode and told management, "I'm waiving my veto. Get me out of here." This is where the swift justice of hockey kicks down the door of the Blues front office. The management in St. Louis handed out massive contracts, handcuffed their salary cap, and assumed locker room chemistry would magically sort itself out. The karma for that corporate arrogance? Total franchise collapse. The ultimate punishment for failing to refresh the roster at the right time is being forced to sell off their biggest offensive jewel at rock bottom. And worse, they'll have to sell low. With Kyrou frustrated and averaging less than a point per game on a dreadful team, rival GMs know St. Louis has zero leverage. For Kent Hughes, though, karma is also knocking. Our GM has spent the last 3 winter windows stockpiling prospects, hoarding draft picks, and preaching patience. The swift justice of sport has a message for him, too. The fan base's patience is gone. The perfect opportunity has landed in his lap. Montreal chased Kyrou last summer and came up short. Now, the player is practically begging to leave. Hughes has a moral obligation to act, or risk being remembered as the executive who froze when the perfect target was right there, pinned down. Let's break down why Kyrou is such a tantalizing prize, even with the red flags. At his peak, this is a player who can change the trajectory of a game with one shift. Blistering speed, a lethal shot, and the kind of puck control that makes defenders look foolish. He's a top-line winger when he's on. Pair him with Nick Suzuki, whose vision and playmaking are elite, and Cole Caulfield, whose finishing is deadly, and you've got a trio that could terrorize opposing defenses. Kyrou's ability to carry the puck through the neutral zone with possession would solve one of Montreal's persistent issues. Too much dump and chase, not enough controlled entries. He stretches the ice, creates odd man rushes, and opens up space for line mates to operate. But this season's numbers, 32 points in a full slate of games, aren't exactly screaming franchise savior. Some of that is on St. Louis. Playing on a dysfunctional team with no structure can tank anyone's stats. Analysts like Travis Yost have pointed out that Kyrou's underlying metrics are still strong. He's creating high-quality chances, but the puck just isn't going in. Bad luck, bad line mates, bad system. Call what you want, but there's evidence he's due for a bounce back in a better environment. The catch, of course, is the price tag, not just in assets, but in cap space, at $8.125 million per year until 2031. This is a rental or a short-term gamble. It's a marriage. If Kyrou comes to Montreal and rediscovers his 75-point form, that contract looks like a steal in a rising cap world. If he flounders, if the chemistry doesn't click, if his defensive lapses become glaring, if St. Louis broke something in his confidence, you're shackled to a massive overpay for nearly half a decade. And with a modified no-trade clause, even moving him later isn't guaranteed to be easy. Then there's the trade cost. St. Louis might be desperate, but they're not idiots. Even with Kyrou's down year and his public desire to leave, they're not giving him away for a bag of pucks. They'll want real value, likely a first-round pick or a package of high second-rounder and a top-tier prospect. Are you willing to part with a Lane Hudson, a David Reinbacher, or the equivalent in draft capital? That's not just a trade. It's a bet on your timeline. You're saying, we're ready to win now, and sacrificing future building blocks to do it. And let's not forget the cap gymnastics. Montreal isn't swimming in space. To fit $8.125 million under the ceiling, Hughes might need to move a contract like Patrick Lane's $8.7 million expiring deal. But even then, St. Louis might demand more than a straight swap of problem contracts. They could ask for additional sweeteners, knowing Lane's value is also depressed. Can Hughes pull off the math without gutting the roster or the prospect pool? There's also the cultural fit to consider. Kyrou isn't a grinder or a 200-foot player in the mold of what Martin St. Louis often prioritizes. He's an offensive dynamo first, with defensive shortcomings that can't be ignored. His minus 12 last season wasn't all on St. Louis' system. If he's not producing at an elite level, those flaws become glaring. Does he adapt to a system that demands accountability? Or does he become a square peg in a round hole on a team trying to build a complete identity? But here's the flip side. Opportunity doesn't knock twice. The Blues are vulnerable. Kyrou wants out. Montreal has chased him before and has the assets to make it happen now. If Hughes can land him at a discount, say, convincing St. Louis to retain $1 million or $2 million of salary per year, this could be the kind of bold swing that defines a GM's legacy. A top line of Suzuki, Caulfield, and Kyrou could be among the league's most dangerous, a unit that forces opposing coaches to lose sleep over matchups. This is the kind of decision that separates the cautious from the courageous. It's not just about Kyrou's talent. It's about timing, risk tolerance, and vision. Do you believe this core is one elite winger away from making real noise in the East? Or do you see a contract that could haunt the franchise if the bet goes south? So I'm setting up the interrogation table and dropping this multi-million-dollar contract right in your lap. You're the decision maker. Approve or veto. Given the brutal need we have for scoring on the right side of our attack, do you send an aggressive package of prospect and picks to steal Jordan Kyrou today, locking in a potential game changer for the next half-decade? Or do you run from that salary, stay the course with a long-term focus, and keep faith in a young core that hasn't fully proven itself yet? Lay it all out in the comments. Don't hold back. Spell out the package you'd offer or why you walk away. The Bell Center demands a lethal attack, and the clock is ticking on this window of opportunity. And don't you dare look away. While we're weighing the cost of Kyrou, whispers are growing louder about another blockbuster in the works. A deal that could reshape our division is brewing, and the details are just starting to leak. We'll tear into that in the next video. Stay locked in.